getting on the session that we're recording. And I am going to, Emily, yes, I think that it is star anise, but that's why I was asking. I've never had it. I've just seen it in pictures, you know, fancy magazine pictures, but I'm going to pop in the chat box an attendance link. Now, you and I both know that this is not a mandatory class, but we'd like to capture your attendance so that we can kind of count how many people are coming to these sessions. So if you just would take a minute for me, that would be greatly appreciated.
Wait, what was all that you were saying, Aaron?
You didn't hear me?
I mean, I heard it, but I don't remember what I was supposed to do.
Oh, click on the attendance link. I put one in the chat box, and I was just saying that this is not a mandatory session, but we'd like to capture your attendance, just so that we, you know, we're not reporting it out to any leader. We just want to make sure that we get an accurate count for how many people attended today. So welcome this is the third and last quarterly EAG education session for this quarter. And if you are new to the EAGs, or just new to these EAG sessions, we started this year doing these EAG education sessions on a quarterly basis, and they are, the topics are chosen by EAG members. We sent out a survey at the beginning of the year to see what kind of topics you were interested in learning about. And this was one of the topics that got the most interest, and which is why we are talking about self-esteem and confidence today. We will be sending out a new survey in January, and all of the current EAG members will be able to weigh in on what you'd like to learn about in 2023. These EAG education sessions, if you're not aware, it's something that we only offer members of the EAG as an extra bonus. They are meant to promote career growth, give you some skills. And as I said, they are not mandatory, but it's something that's supposed to help enhance your work experience. And hopefully there's some skills that you can take away and help your EAG, your team, and in your personal life as well. So I really appreciate you guys coming today. Sorry if I keep having gaps. I think I need to change the batteries in my mouse because it's a little bit draggy. Anyway, we won't let that stop us. So my name is Erin Hancock. I know some of you, this is the first time that you've probably heard from me. I am a manager on the experience team. We are sort of over all of the EAGs, and we are here for all your resources for EAGs. And so I want you to feel free to reach out to the team, and we have a team email, which is experiencesteam@ensemblehp.com, or you can reach out to me personally, and that's fine too. Erin Hancock. So I am going to, I already gave you the attendance link. I'm sorry, I'm a little kerfuffle today. I got like weird news right before this class, so I apologize. We are going to start with understanding self-esteem and confidence. We are going to move on to building and maintaining self-esteem and confidence. And then we're going to go over some tips for applying these skills that we're going to learn about today. Now, I do want to tell you that, you know, this is a fairly smaller group. If you have something that you'd like to say, something that you'd like to talk about, you know, feel free to unmute and talk. If you're a little bit on the shy side, go ahead and type in the chat box. But I do want you to feel free to share anything that you want, and I will ask for your participation from time to time. So I do have a little poll to start us off. Let's see, I think it was Monday. I sent out an email, and it had an assessment on that email. And I am just curious, it was not mandatory to do that assessment, but I have a little poll here. If you guys could just weigh in for me, did you complete that self-assessment prior to coming to this class? Okay. So I got about like 60% of people weighing in on here. So that's okay. So here are the results. It looks like a couple of people did do that self-assessment. Most of you didn't. And some of you probably didn't even get the assessment, or maybe you didn't open the email. That's okay. Like I said, it's not something that is mandatory to participate in this session. It is something just to kind of make you a little more aware of kind of where you stand with your own self-esteem and confidence. I will be sending out an email on Thursday or Friday of this week, and it'll have this recording, and it'll have some resources, and I will send that. I'll attach that assessment again. So if you are interested in taking it after the fact, you can certainly do that then. All right, so understanding self-esteem and confidence. And sometimes these things are used interchangeably, and that's not really how they should be used. Self-esteem is really about how you view yourself, and confidence is more about how you view your abilities. And it's not unusual to find that some people feel very confident in their abilities, but still have like lower self-esteem. So I was going to say it sounds like you couldn't be both ways, but I feel fairly confident at work. However, sometimes personally my own self-esteem is not always so great. As I said, self-esteem refers to how we feel about ourselves, and it really guides our thoughts, feelings, behaviors. It's very wrapped up in the concept of worth. Are you a worthy person? And it's formed through life experiences and our relationships with other people. That's how we, build our self-esteem. Confidence, it's really more about trusting yourself and your abilities to achieve goals and succeed at challenges. And so this tends to be a little more applicable to us at work. It's often easier to build than self-esteem. You can, like I say, you can feel really confident about your abilities and maybe not so great about yourself. And it's formed through knowledge and practice, which makes sense since it's all about abilities. What we're really aiming for is that sweet spot in the middle where, you feel great about both. So that's the difference between self-esteem and confidence. I do want to touch on some myths about self-esteem and confidence, because sometimes it helps to say a thing out loud and to realize how ridiculous it is. So the first myth is that you must feel confident to take action. That's not true. Okay. So if you're somebody who's like, I really want to talk to my leader about these changes I want to make in this process, but I just need to, get up my courage. I need to really feel confident before I'm going to tackle that. That just isn't going to work, because the truth is, you must take action to feel confident. It's really the other way around. You are never going to take the necessary steps or risks you need to be successful if you are waiting for that confidence to appear. That's just not how it works. Confidence is an outcome of you taking that action. It's not a prerequisite. So just keep that in mind. Another myth is self-esteem is achieved through epic success. Okay. And I'm not talking about epic, the system, because, though that may build your self-esteem if you had epic success, but self-esteem is actually achieved through small wins. Okay. And that means that authentic self-esteem and confidence really isn't something that's big and showy. In fact, it's more sustainable and better built through consistent actions over time. And, there are so many ways that we can talk about the importance of consistency, but this is a really good application of that. If you can consistently, make that small push and gain momentum, you can really build your self-esteem through those small wins. And that's true of so many things in life. So just remember that it doesn't need to be something huge and flashy. That may feel good for a little time, but it may not really, add up to great self-esteem. Another myth is confidence equals unwavering self-esteem. That's just not true, okay? Confidence fluctuates depending on the circumstances. So just don't make the mistake of holding yourself to an impossible standard of feeling confident 100% of the time. Absolutely nobody does. There may be times where you see people and you're like, they must be the most confident people on earth because they're always behaving as if they're confident. It's it's not true. It's all an illusion. Nobody feels that way all of the time. Highs and lows are natural. It's really dependent on, life circumstances, your energy levels, the time of the month, work environment, the people you are around all the time. Yeah, Dan says that it's tough when confidence drops. It is, but it is something that happens to literally everyone. You can't maintain, and nobody should expect themselves to maintain, 100% of the time always feeling confident. It really is situational. Confidence involves being pushy, loud, and aggressive. Okay? And the truth is that confidence requires assertiveness, but it's often actually very understated. We've really been conditioned to equate confidence with bravado and being really outgoing. Confident people are really portrayed as gregarious, fast talkers, really articulate. They hold their head high. They command a room when they walk in. And maybe that's one example of a confident person, but that's not the only kind of confidence. Quiet confidence is all about, speaking up when you need to, accepting your mistakes, advocating for yourself and other people, and really being able to recognize what you've done well without seeking validation from other people. That's really what confidence is about. It's not being the loudest person in the room or the person who attracts the most attention. That isn't really confidence. In the last class we had somebody mention that they've always thought that the loudest people are maybe the people with, the lowest self-esteem. And there's something to that, because I think that doesn't necessarily always mean that that's the case. But yeah, I worked with a girl that I worked side by side with her, and she took, I'm not kidding you, probably like 3 to 5 selfies a day while we were at work. I have no idea how many that she took at home. Her makeup and hair and clothes were immaculate every day. And my first impression of her was that she was very vain and very inflated. As I got to know her, I realized that that was something that she did to overcompensate for the fact that she actually had incredibly low self-esteem. And so sometimes being, pushy, loud, and aggressive is a way to overcompensate for not feeling so confident. And this last one, self-esteem is motivated by self-criticism. And that's something that I personally have had to get through my brain, okay? Like that's not how it works. It's actually motivated by self-empathy. Being nice to yourself actually builds your self-esteem, but criticizing yourself doesn't. And it sounds really silly for me to say it out loud because, of course that's the way it would work. But in my mind, I keep thinking like the harder that I am on myself, the more I'll push myself to be better. And then that means that I will feel more confident and have better self-esteem. And that isn't the way it works. You are undermining yourself when you are that critical of yourself, okay? Self-esteem is actually motivated by that self-empathy. It's when you are criticizing yourself constantly, it's associated with low motivation, it's lower self-control, and that kind of prevents us from taking action to reach our goals. When you are empathetic to yourself, that's the path to resiliency, being emotionally strong, and it's over time going to increase your confidence. So is there anything that speaks to you here? Is there a myth that you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that I thought that? Oh, Rebecca, we're going to go over the words have power because you were right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this is hitting home pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, like we're going to touch on how we talk to ourselves a couple more times throughout this presentation because it is so, prevalent. And it is such an issue. Is there anything else that anybody has noticed on here that they've had issues with, or a myth that they thought was maybe, real? It's okay if you don't. I won't make you guys talk.
I was actually going to say the confidence equals unwavering self-esteem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's apparently not true at all.
It isn't. And it's funny because, we really, and we live in a society that kind of like, we're all, I'm not any longer, but you're part of social media, and people only share the very best parts of their lives. They pick through and they only show you the good pieces. And so that builds up this sort of, view of everybody else around you, where you think, when you're comparing your life to theirs, like, oh, well, I don't really measure up. And that's not a real comparison, because you're comparing your real life to, just these, highlights of other people's lives. Emily says live calls give her low self-esteem when I have to talk. Oh, okay. So you have difficulty with that. And that's, that's something that is real. Like some people really have a difficult time talking. Cassandra, yes, you're super critical to yourself and you build anybody else up. We are going to talk about that because I have that issue as well. You are not alone. Dan, I know Dan has a lot of self-criticism moments.
Let's make sure we get that on record. Yep.
Yeah, this is being recorded. So Dan Connors has some self-criticism moments. And he doesn't need to, but like I said, we will touch on that more. And then I just, I like that you guys are at least relating to this because I want it to be relevant to you. So now we're going to talk about validation, okay? Our need for social acceptance, to be accepted by our peers, is really deeply ingrained in our consciousness, okay? And, we have a need for that acceptance from other human beings. So it's really easy to understand why so many of us give, significant weight to what other people think about us and whether they give us accolades or criticism. It's not a bad thing to care about what other people think of you because it helps ensure our basic needs are met. I'm not at all suggesting that you shouldn't care at all what people think, but whenever you place too much value on what other people think about you, it can become an ingrained need for external validation, and that's not healthy. Okay, our self-esteem is largely based on our sense of worth, and that's dictated by either ourselves or by other people's opinions. So what we've got here is external validation and internal validation. So external validation, it's really about you determine your sense of worth based on what other people think about you or say to you, or just even your perception of what people think of you. But it's always outside yourself. You're always looking for ways outside yourself to get that. It may even be, like I said, the social media aspect. You may find yourself really upset because you didn't get enough likes on a picture you posted to Instagram. That is not healthy. It's not within your control. It's not always factual at all. It feeds a persistent need to be liked and approved of, and it makes you feel good for a little while, but it's fleeting. It's not something that can last. And I will tell you that this is something I have worked on for myself. Let's see, it would be, what year is this? 2022, 2021. I worked for years for a boss who was, and it was not her intention. I want you to say right up front, I just want to say that this is 100% my own issue, but she fed my need for external validation. Everything I did was golden. She loved everything I did, let me have, just carte blanche with everything that I did. And she just always gave me encouragement. Then at the beginning of this year, I started working for a guy who didn't do all the head pats. I call them head pats because what I felt like was like a little puppy that's like, please, please like me, please give me approval. And that is not the way that he worked. And that's okay, because like I said, it's my problem, not a problem with him. He gave out, kudos. He was just not a head pat type of guy, and that's okay. It was really good for me to work for somebody like that, because I realized that my need for external validation was really getting in my way. And so I had to really build up my internal validation. Now, internal validation, it's really looking to yourself to determine your worth, okay, what you think of you. It's within your control because it is based on what you think. And it's based on your internal definition of success, okay, what you think is successful. It builds that resiliency and non-judgment, and it's very sustainable since it's not dependent on anybody else to maintain it. Now, I will say that, a little caveat here. If you don't think a lot of yourself, your internal validation may be off a little bit. And that is something that you will have to consciously work on. And that's okay. I am living proof that you can work on it. I am a work in progress. I'm nowhere near perfect, but not even close. Anyway, even saying that makes me laugh. But it is something that you can work on. When you have an issue with external validation, it really manifests itself as like overthinking situations or stewing over interactions or just people pleasing in general. I am somebody who absolutely will wake up at like 3 a.m. and then I'll think about that dumb thing that I said in this meeting, and I'll sit there and, beat myself up for it. And nobody cares. Seriously, probably everybody forgot about it. So, we need to look for that in ourselves. I do have another little poll here, and I am going to share with you guys. And it says, how often do you determine your worth by external validation? Is this an issue for anybody? Okay. So here's where it kind of sits. There's some of us who feel like, they probably have an issue with, this external validation. And then some people who feel like, sometimes maybe they do that. And then we do have that one individual that's like almost never. And like, kudos to you. Catherine says, I feel that intrinsic satisfaction is highly underrated. We don't stress it nearly enough. We don't. And, this is something that you're really going to have to kind of, sit and kind of assess yourself and wonder, where do I get my validation from? How do I form my opinions about myself? Because if it's based on what other people think of me always, that just isn't realistic or healthy. And also, you do need to learn to like yourself a little more if it is based on what you think, but still not great. So next, we do have a little video, and it's a very short little video about worthiness from Brene Brown.
The question I think that drives my work is really, what is the struggle? What is our struggle with believing that we're enough? How does that play into the bigger cultural picture? What are the messages and expectations that fuel this sense that we have to be perfect, that we're not allowed to be vulnerable? It's about waking up in the morning and saying, you know, no matter what gets done and how much is done and how it's done, I'm enough and I'm worthy of love and belonging and joy. I think wholeheartedness, the entire idea of wholeheartedness, is about engaging with the world from a place of worthiness.
I'm like, I was gonna let that that video play out because it's got like that nice meditation, relaxing music with it. So that video I like because she really captures the essence of self-worth, and self-worth is so entwined with self-esteem and how you feel about yourself. I really can't stress enough that, you know, you need to be kind to yourself. And Rebecca brought this up earlier. You know, we can be incredibly hard on ourselves. So this concept, what you think you become. And what I mean by that is not like, you know, I think that, you know, I can fly, so I'm going to become Superman or something. It's basically that your worth cannot be determined by anybody else. It is only determined by you. Even if you're looking to external sources to determine your self-worth, how you process that external validation is really what's going to make or break your self-esteem. Your level of confidence and self-esteem is really dependent on how you think about yourself. Okay, so it may be difficult, but it is completely up to you to decide your level of self-esteem and confidence. How do you speak to yourself? And Rebecca, I actually have it in my notes here to tell you that words matter. Okay, negative self-talk is a real issue. Real issue. You know, it's maybe, you know, oversharing with you guys, but I see a therapist on a regular basis. And this was something that I had a humongous problem with. And it still, you know, rears its head from time to time, but she gave me the best piece of advice ever. And it's this. I'm going to share it with you. It's been the best tool to help me get rid of this. Rule of thumb: if you can't imagine saying it to a loved one, do not say it to yourself. And I use this all the time. Everybody kind of has that ugly little mean voice inside their head that tells them all sorts of lies about themselves. And the tricky thing about that voice is that it's you, and you know your weak points and all of your sensitive spots, everything that hurts and is most tender, better than anybody else. So when that voice speaks to you, it has insight that nobody else could ever have. You are able to hurt yourself more than anybody else could. You say the meanest things to yourself. And maybe there are some people on this call that don't have that issue, and I congratulate you if you don't. But when my mean voice will tell me that I'm stupid or fat or ugly, I have to ask myself, would you say this to your daughter? I have a 15-year-old daughter. I would never, ever say those things to her. Not in a million years. And so why is it okay to say it to myself? It's not. And so I want you to start employing that. If you have that mean, ugly voice that says those things to you, ask yourself, would you ever say that to somebody you loved? Yes, Abby, imagining you saying those mean things to your younger self, absolutely. I have also heard, you know, you can be really, really self-critical of choices that you've made in the past. But that's you after you've had all the information. And most of us do the best we can with the information that we have. And so you can't beat yourself up for those things. So I really want you to think about how you speak to yourself, and it is possible to move past it. Now, I will tell you, I have not reached the point where I can be nice to myself yet, but I have been able to stop being mean to myself. I'm sort of in this neutral zone, and that's okay. It's still way better than where I was at. So remember, you know, don't say those things to yourself. You can cut those thoughts off. And this last piece here, are you a human being or a human doing? And what that essentially means is that your worth is not determined by how good a job you do or even your abilities. Okay. It I'm putting things in here that like I have experience with myself, but there's so many of us that equate our worth with what we can do, with what we can bring to the team. And that's where we gain our worth. And that isn't a factor at all. You are worthwhile without any of these things. Just by being you, you are worthwhile. And I guarantee you that if you ask the people that even you work with, I mean, I'm not even talking about your family, those people who love you no matter what. I'm talking about your team. I guarantee you that they would tell you that you bring something to the group and it's just you. It's not even your abilities. So I want you to think about that, because you are worthwhile just by being you. You know, I will tell you, like, this is something that I struggled with, and my boss really ended up giving me a gift because we were having a conversation one day, and I asked her, like, why, you know, what was it about me that made you want me for this team? And I thought for sure that she'd be like, oh, well, you're good at this or you're good at that, or I, you know, wanted your skill on this certain thing. And what she told me was, no, it's your personality. Like, I liked your personality, and that's why I wanted you on the team. And that did more to like quell this than anything else. But I want you to remember that you are worthwhile just by being you. It's important. You can really relate this back down to the EAGs as well. You're all members of an EAG, or most of you are, and it's really important when you are trying to boost team morale, you know, that you are recognizing things that, you know, are not just skills or accomplishments, that maybe you're recognizing like somebody who is kind, you know, that they are terrific for these other reasons, or just by being you. We want to celebrate you. So many times it's all about, you know, well, you got the most POS collections, or, you know, you've got perfect attendance. And those are things, I'm not saying at all that we don't want to recognize it. We definitely do. But people also need to be recognized for just being the unique person that they are. Okay, so before we move on to this next section, does anybody have anything that they'd like to say, share with the group, questions? If you don't, it's okay.
I think it's interesting that when you said that about, you know, what you think about yourself, because it actually made me go back in my mind several years ago. It was my birthday and I was working, and I was just a grump, and everybody kept telling me happy birthday, and I was like, ugh, I wish people would stop doing that, because just in terms of self-esteem and just not being nice to myself. There was someone that I was working with, he turned around and he looked at me, he goes, will you stop? They are celebrating the fact that you are alive, and that's enough. And that hit me so square in the heart that I was like, I can't complain about my birthday anymore. And now I've just it's like, let's have like let's like have a whole birthday week, because it is worth something worth celebrating.
It is. And you know, anybody that knows Rebecca, it's hilarious in some ways. Some ways it's kind of sad, but like she thinks of herself as like this like mean old grump that's like, you know, a big crab butt about everything. And really, Rebecca is the sweetest, kindest, you know, like most encouraging person on earth. She's always a good time, like whether she thinks she's grumpy or not. But she is somebody who brings worth, you know, or brings something to that team just by being her. And so, you know, you need to know that, because like the way that you look at everybody else on your team or that you work with or even in your family, that's how they see you too. It's okay to be nice to yourself. That's okay. It's allowed. You can even like yourself. So now we're going to talk a little bit about building and maintaining self-esteem and confidence. Oh, Dan says the thing that hits home to me is that lots of people I look up to have self-doubt, and that is not something to be ignored, but something that needs to be managed. Yeah, most definitely. And you do have to realize that to some extent, you know, your issues of worth, self-esteem, your confidence, those are all kind of, you know, affected from time to time and fluctuate. So but it's something that I think that if you're going to ignore or overlook, it can become an issue. All right, so when we are trying to build our self-esteem and confidence, we really need to think of it as a skill, because it is something that we can learn and build. Like, nobody just is born with amazing self-esteem and well, you know, maybe babies are. I don't know. I don't want to diagnose a baby with, you know, like any kind of mental health problems, but just over time, you know, we develop all of these things, and it's not something that just happens naturally. So, you know, to develop that skill, you first need to understand what it is and how it works. So taking like this class, that may be a step in the right direction of deepening your understanding of what this skill is, what it means, and what you need to work on. The next piece is practice, okay? Changing how you think about yourself and your abilities. It's really slow going, it's slow work, but it's really rewarding. Okay, so don't punish yourself for setbacks. You really do need to focus on progress, not perfection. Something I learned, I've been on this like weight loss journey for it feels like forever, and see, I'm not going to punish myself for it because I'm not where I want to be yet. But something I've learned that I've taken with me and applied it to so many aspects of my life is called the 80-20 rule. That means if I want to be consistent, if I want things to happen, I need to practice it 80% of the time, and 20% of the time is that gap where I mess up. And that's okay. You can still have success if you apply that 80-20 rule. So be consistent 80% of the time. 20% is that room for, you know, messing up, and that's okay because it's expected. Get feedback, okay? You need to talk to somebody you trust about your goals, what you're trying to do. And that means you need to find a trustworthy source. And that doesn't, I mean, trustworthy, it has a lot of applications, but really what you want is somebody who is going to be honest with you, be genuine, and tell you the facts without being mean. If you really want that feedback, and feedback isn't always easy to hear, but it is really incredibly useful. So find that person that will be able to give you that honest feedback. You don't want somebody who is going to be really mean and critical, because that's not going to help you out. And you don't want somebody who's only going to tell you what you want to hear, because that's not helpful either. So really make sure that you're finding somebody who's going to give you feedback that's useful. And like I say, you can share and commiserate with them. You know, maybe that's a goal that they have as well. So get that feedback. Your mindset really is everything. And so it's important, you know, if you really want to feel successful off the bat, you know, identify some strengths that you may have and lead with those first. I want to talk for a second about body language, okay? Because it's something that seems really minor, but it really can help boost your confidence level. And first little piece here is posture, okay? You don't need to be, you know, militant about it, but sitting up straight seems more confident than a slumped posture. And every time I've done this class now, as soon as I say that, I realize I'm slumping and I want to sit up straight. But, you know, how do you carry yourself? It's worth thinking about. Has anybody ever heard of power pose? Yes, no, maybe so. Yes. Megan and Rebecca have heard of power pose. Catherine, yes. Okay. Wow. You guys are like really educated on power pose. So for those of you who don't know, power pose is basically, I'm not going to like put myself on camera and do that. Just not going to do that. But it's basically, if you imagine Superman or Wonder Woman, you know, they have their feet spread, you know, they have their hands on their hips, you know, straight back, they have their chin up, and that is power pose. They have done studies that have shown that if you are not feeling really great about yourself or very confident about a situation, that if you stand in power pose for, you know, 30 seconds to a minute, you actually feel a boost in your confidence just by putting your body that way. So now, I'm not recommending that you walk around, you know, the facility in power pose. That might be weird, but if you have, you know, like a class that you're teaching and you're feeling kind of nervous about it, or, you know, you're going to talk to your boss about something, or even a coworker, maybe take some time to do a power pose before you start, because that's going to make you feel a little bit better. We also want to think about our voices. Okay. And I've got some interesting stats for you. I think this is amazing, but, our words convey 7% of the meaning, only 7%, our tone 38%, and our body language makes up 55% of what the audience will remember. That's amazing to me. So if we are talking face to face, the message that you're getting from me, the majority of it is from my body language. And that means, you know, everything that my body is telling you, hands, facial expressions, you know, my spine even. And when we are virtual like this, it's amazing to remember that my words aren't even conveying most of the meaning. It's the way that I'm saying those words. And you know this to be true, because if I was going through this presentation and I was saying, like, you know, our words convey 7% of the meaning, our tone 38%, and our body language, like, you probably wouldn't pick up a lot of what I was saying. But if we can listen to what we're saying and how we're saying it, we can really make more of an impact and feel more confident about what we're saying. And I like to use examples. So like my husband, you know, he'll say something to me like, well, you know, what did I say? How did I upset you? And I'll tell him, like, it's not what you said, it's how you said it. And so, you know, that tone means so much. It's so much more than what you're saying. The next one is eye contact. Okay. Making eye contact not only tells people you're listening, but they will also feel more inclined to listen to you. And you know this to be true, because if you are talking face to face with somebody and they, you know, are looking at their phone, you're like, well, you're not hearing anything I'm saying. Also, just a side note, people tend to avoid eye contact when they're lying. So, you know, what you could be telling people if you're not making eye contact is that you're not very trustworthy. And that may not be the truth of the matter, obviously. And they may not even formulate it that way, you know, in their brain, but that is what, you know, unconsciously your body language is saying to them. There's something called mirroring. If you're not familiar with this concept, I'll explain it, but it's an easy way to establish connection with you and somebody else. So it usually happens sort of subconsciously, like we all do it, but you can do it purposefully as well. And that's where you imitate or copy that other person's body language, their speech patterns, facial expressions, that kind of thing. And what I mean by that is, you know, if somebody's very relaxed, then your body's going to be relaxed. If, you know, they are smiling at you, you'll probably be smiling. If they're excited and they're, you know, talking very excitedly, you will probably do that too. And we all unconsciously mimic that. But you can also create a connection and feel more secure and confident with that connection if you're kind of doing it purposely. Now, I will tell you that you maybe want to kind of practice that with somebody, because you might come off as like a serial killer if you're just copying something that everybody is doing. So, but just to be aware. hand gestures are really important. And I really, this is probably a misnomer. It's probably not really hand gestures, but it's how you use your hands. If you were sticking your hands in your pockets or crossing your arms, that really conveys a lack of confidence. You know, if you're pointing or putting your hands on your hips, that's seen as more aggressive. So you want to think about, what are you doing with your hands? Maybe they could be a little more relaxed, and maybe that makes you feel more confident. And the last one is facial expressions. Okay, everybody would probably benefit. Like Dan says that he forces himself, or he used to force himself when he went into the hospital, to smile. And we could probably all benefit from that, smiling more. And we need to be aware of what our listening face looks like our resting face. Some of us may be guilty of having a mean looking resting face. And, that's probably not what we want. It helps sometimes to look in the mirror, and you might feel goofy, but it can be helpful. So, just make sure that you're thinking about those things. So this next little bit here, I want to talk about practicing self-awareness. That's one of those ways that we're building confidence and self-esteem. And I have joined the Experience team, I think it was in August. And since then, I've done a lot of classes on soft skills, and building those soft skills. And I am absolutely shocked at the amount of adult people that do not practice self-awareness. They have zero self-awareness. In fact, they won't think about how they come off to people. They won't think about, if what they're doing is harmful to others or boosting them up. They don't think about anything. And people are shockingly unself-aware. But the fact of the matter is if we want to grow at all, just as people, not only in our careers, but just as people, we need to practice self-awareness. And self-awareness is kind of, it's simple, but maybe it's not easy. What you want to do is ask yourself, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And this may seem like a weird question to ask yourself, but we disconnect ourselves from what we're thinking or feeling very easily. We have all formed sort of like these ways to protect ourselves, or these conditioning sort of mechanisms that we have, and we need to get past them. Sometimes people are so out of touch with their feelings that they don't understand what they are feeling. I know that for me, for a very long time, my default feeling was anger. So if I was feeling scared, it felt like anger. I thought I was mad. If I was, like irritated, it was anger. Like a lot of stuff translated to anger for me. And I had to really dig deep to think about, what am I really feeling? What's made me feel this way? And so this can really, really help you build your self-awareness. I would also recommend journaling, because a lot of things come out while you're writing that don't come out in mental conversations with yourself. What's also helpful is asking yourself, when do you feel most confident? When you feel really good about a situation, it's a good time to pause and reflect and ask yourself this, like, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? How can I recreate that feeling again? Was it because I was super prepared and that's why I feel confident? Was it because I was, like negating all of that bad, negative self-talk, and that's why I feel really good? Just ask yourself, why do I feel confident in this moment? And that will help you build it later on. You really need to keep an open mind. You need to think about what your strengths are, what your areas for growth are. You really need to think about, what does self-discipline mean to you? And maybe that's, just monitoring how you're thinking. I do want to say that, Cassandra, you'd pointed out that smiling when you're making or answering calls. It makes you feel less robotic. And it's true. So smiling is one of those things also that we see a boost in. I can't remember if it's serotonin. I don't remember. It's one of those feel-good chemicals. So if you're feeling kind of poopy, or maybe you're like Rebecca and you're having a grump day, you can paste a smile on your face. And if it's not genuine right off the bat, it eventually will be. So, thank you for pointing out the power of smiling. And this last little bit about building that self-esteem and confidence is practicing self-empathy. And we talked, when we talked about those myths, is that, if we're really hypercritical of ourselves, then it's going to build our self-esteem and confidence. And, that actually self-empathy is the way to build that. So we really want to think about, what does self-empathy mean? You want to surround yourself with the right kind of people. And what I mean by that is, you don't have a choice in the people that you work with or the patients that you interact with, but you do have a choice in your private life of who you interact with, at least to a very large extent. You need to find people who know the real you, okay? They speak to the value you bring, they know what your talents are, and they know that you're worthwhile. Those are the people that you want to surround yourself with. You need to take care of yourself. Now, when I say take care of yourself, I want to know what that means to you. And there's no wrong answers, but if you guys can put it in the chat box, what does taking care of yourself look like for you? Okay, so Abby says learning when it's okay to say no and knowing when your limits are being reached. Absolutely. That is a great way to take care of yourself. Catherine, being kinder. Do you mean being kinder to yourself or being kinder to other people? Both. Yeah. And it's kind of weird how that works too, because it's kind of circular. When you are nice to other people, it kind of is a reward for you as well. Dan says, letting myself totally cut off from thinking about work after hours. That's hard. It's really hard, but I think it is beneficial. Rebecca says, journaling to get my thoughts straight, taking the time to be alone and recenter. And I knew you're going to say that because I totally get how you're like, I'm all done peopling and I just need to be alone for a while. Megan says self-care time, like face masks and baths. Yes. So for me, if I was going to do something that I wanted to do, I would literally probably curl up in bed with a book and I would read all day long. That's the only way my brain really shuts off, is if I'm reading. And so that's what I would do. Now, a little bit of that is good, but I also, if I want to take care of myself, that means I have to be very conscious and intentional about spending time with my husband and my daughter. And so I will schedule things to do with them, so that we are interacting and having a relationship together. It also, I do not like going to the gym. It's not something that I'm like, ooh, yeah, I gotta go to the gym and sweat and do stuff I don't want. But it is really great for my mental health. And it's great for my physical health as well. And so that's also taking care of myself. So you have to be, aware of what's good for you that maybe you don't love to do. You need to give yourself some grace, okay? Don't hold yourself to a standard that is completely unattainable. And this is part of that self-criticism piece. We really do hold ourselves to standards that we would never hold anybody else to. So be really graceful with yourself. Be true to yourself. Accept who you are and realize that who you are is worthwhile. It's okay to be you. Realize that you are unique and valuable just by being you. You know, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and that's just the way people are built. But you are the only you in the whole wide world. And that's something that to be celebrated. And I love Rebecca's example of, you know, that people are excited that she was born and they wanted to celebrate that because it's true. You know, you're a big deal and it's okay to own that. Now, I do have in those resources that I'm going to be sending you at the end of the week, there is a template that I would like you to either print out or use on the computer. And it's basically a list of how you're amazing. And I give you some prompts, but I want you to take some time to fill it out and be very honest, not, you know, not mean honest, but like, you know, that graceful sort of honest. Fill it out and keep it close by. Take a picture of it with your phone. But when you're feeling really down, take a look at that list and you will be able to tell yourself, like, listen, like, you are awesome. Cassandra says, a Harley ride to clear the mind and just relax. You know what, Cassandra, I've had a lot of people tell me they don't ride Harleys. That's a little more cool. I think that you're a little more cool than a lot of people. But I've heard a lot of people actually tell me that they like cruising around and just listening to the radio. So, you know, it really can do a lot for you. I know that, like, if I take a walk around my neighborhood, it's terrible weather right now, so I haven't been able to do that. But if I take a walk around the neighborhood, that really helps me. Yeah, it is a whole different view of the world. Okay, so there is this book called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, and it's by Nathaniel Branden. And he's kind of like this pioneer in psychology for self-esteem. And he identified these 6 pillars, kind of what it's made up of. So if you're looking for a book to read about self-esteem, it's the 6 Pillars by Nathaniel Branden. Now, the first piece is this practice of living consciously. And it's really all about being mindful, okay? Being very intentional about what we do, being present in the moment. And that's really going to help us with our self-esteem. We don't want to allow ourselves to become disconnected to things. Bye, Becky. And so there's this next piece, and it's the practice of self-acceptance. We really want to, you know, own our truths regarding our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. And we need to be our own champion, really. So we really want to accept ourselves just the way that we are. And that's going to lead us to be the best self that we can be. You need to practice self-responsibility, okay? And that means, again, that you're going to be owning these actions, but you need to know that what you do has an effect on other people. So own that. The practice of self-assertiveness. We need to treat our needs and interests with respect, and stand for what we believe in and who we are. It's important that we don't go against our authentic self. Oops, so sorry. Skipped ahead there, unintentional. The practice of living purposefully, and that means that you're formulating goals and implementing action plans. So everybody needs a purpose in life, so it's important that you're very intentional about it. And then this last one is the practice of personal integrity. We need to maintain alignment between our behaviors and our convictions. Basically, we don't cross those lines that we have set for ourselves, okay? And so those are those, it's a very brief outline of what that book is about, but those are those 6 pillars of self-esteem. So now I have some application, okay? We have just a couple of scenarios about, you know, how we can apply this stuff. You know, there are situations that can be improved by us behaving confidently. and we can reframe certain situations to help us gain some self-esteem. So one of those situations is point of service collections conversations, okay? So I'm going to walk you through this little scenario. This is Sandra and Claire. They have a lot in common. They are both registrars at a large hospital and they see a lot of patients a day. They both really enjoy interacting with their patients and helping them. They both also dislike having financial conversations with patients, and neither Sandra nor Claire feel very confident, but that's where those similarities end. A typical POS conversation for Sandra's with the glasses here, it goes something like this. I have an estimate for your procedure here and your responsibility is $200. Are you going to be able to pay anything towards that today? So she usually says this as she's looking down at her keyboard or the actual estimate. And because she's uncomfortable, she's quiet. And the patient often must ask her to repeat herself. Sandra enjoys most aspects of her job, but struggles with collecting. Claire, on the other hand, a typical conversation with a patient goes more like this.
Mr. Nugget, as I mentioned earlier, I have an estimate for your procedure right here. Your responsibility after insurance has paid is $200. I would be happy to explain your benefits to you and take your payment now.
So Claire makes a point of speaking clearly with a smile on her face, just like you guys pointed out, and looks the patient in the eye. Claire is also uncomfortable with POS conversations, but she finds that being assertive and ready to have the conversation makes them a little bit easier for her. So what are some differences between how each woman handles those POS conversations? Go ahead and you can unmute or you can put it in the chat box. What are some major differences that you noticed? Clarity, okay. Dan says clarity. Cassandra, Jordan, Catherine. Let's see, eye contact. The second one sounded more confident, was louder and sounded happy. Yeah, Catherine, confidence of expression. The second one is not shriveling away. Absolutely, right? I mean, you could see from the pictures that these people, have very different body language. And they also have, the tone of voice. Sandra's tone of voice sounds really unsure, but Claire has an assertive tone of voice. There's also a difference in, the scripting, okay? That expectation is set by Claire's scripting. So who would you rather give your money to? Sandra, the first one, or Claire, the second one? Claire, yes. Celissa, yes. Like nobody wants to give their money to somebody who doesn't sound like they even know what they do with it, right? Like that doesn't sound like a good idea. Do you think approaching something as if you feel confident about it makes you more confident over time? Yes, fake it till you make it. Yeah, Catherine, definitely. And even with things that you're not comfortable with or you dislike, then you start to feel better about it. Yeah, and Megan, like the more that you practice something and the more comfortable you get, your confidence is naturally going to go up. So you can apply this to so many situations in your life. If there's something that you are uncomfortable with, like, chances are if you can jump in and do it, you're going to build that confidence in it. I will tell you that I was not always a facilitator and it did make me nervous at first. And I just threw myself into every situation that I could, and that built my confidence over time. So it really can be applied in a lot of different ways. So I have one more situation for you. Now, a lot of times we have to speak to our leaders, and they could be about lots of different things. Okay. Like, maybe you want to talk to them about, a process that's gone wrong, or you want to talk to them about an issue that you're having, or maybe career growth, or maybe even like on the behalf of the EAG, you're like, I would really like to get some funds. There are lots of different reasons, and you want those interactions to go well. So I have some tips for you. You need to be prepared. You need to know what you'd like to say before approaching your leader, because it's going to lend you confidence if you know what you want to say and kind of how you say it. How do they like to communicate? It is worth considering if, does your leader prefer like the whole backstory to something, or are they somebody who just wants concise, bullet point information? Do they like you to provide data to back up, your problem or whatever, or do they like to hear the whole thing? If you can customize your approach to their preferences, it really strengthens your chances of a positive outcome. Timing. Pick the right time. It's so important. So what can you guys name some situations that aren't a good time to approach your leader? When's a good time not to approach your leader? Bathroom. Sorry.
Potty humor always wins out.
And yeah, it's probably weird to approach them in the bathroom. Or even if they just came out of the bathroom, maybe that's not a good time. Megan says after hours when they're really busy. Yeah, like especially like if they're like 5 minutes from walking out the door, like maybe that's not a good time to stop them. Cassandra says you never want to, always afraid I'm in trouble for something. I can tell that you're a rebel, Cassandra, because you're riding your Harley around, always getting into trouble. Catherine says when they're busy during a meeting, schedule in advance if possible. Yes, you're very wise, Catherine. There are lots of people, I'm kind of surprised that they will try to bring up, issues that maybe should be discussed one-on-one in a group meeting. And that's not a good idea. And when they're busy isn't great either. So it is really great to try to schedule a time with them. We talked about the importance of body language. So look them in the eye, smile, sit up straight. It's going to help you feel and seem more confident. Be ready with suggestions. Absolutely nobody likes it when somebody just brings in problems, but no solutions. So be that person who kind of brainstorms solutions ahead of time and, are able to bring some to your leader. Even if they don't use those suggestions, they'll really appreciate the fact that you took some time to think about it. And you're going to really mark yourself out as a leader. So use manners, and that sounds like a dumb duh. Of course, Aaron, I always use manners, but remember, this person doesn't owe you their time or consideration to talk about these things, not all the time. So it's appropriate to tell them thank you for your time. That will mark you as somebody who actually appreciates them. So I'm going to guide you through this little scenario here. So this cute little gal, her name is Jennifer. She's noticed some processes that don't seem very effective while she's been registering patients and would like to talk to her leader, Amber, about them. Jennifer isn't feeling very confident about approaching Amber. So I want you guys to help me with Jennifer talking to Amber. So while she's noticed these processes that could be changed, she really hasn't written them down. Do you recommend that she just rely on her memory when she speaks to Amber, or should she come more prepared? Should she have some documentation with her? Yeah, Megan says, write them down. Write it down, bullet points. Yes. She wants to be prepared, right? It's best to be prepared. Jennifer spots Amber as they're getting coffee. Amber seems as though she's in a hurry to get somewhere. Should Jennifer hold up Amber and try to talk to her about the process problems right then? No. Should she approach her in the bathroom? Maybe later? Just kidding. So no, that the timing just isn't right. So Jennifer does ask Amber if there is a good time to stop by her office, and Amber tells Jennifer to come by after lunch. So just like Catherine had said, she's got that appointment now. While she's at lunch, Jennifer realizes that she's only bringing Amber the issues that she sees with the current processes. Should she trust that Amber will have some improvements in mind, or should she come up with some herself? What do you guys think? Come up with some. Yeah, brainstorm a little. Always bring solutions and suggestions. Yes, that's right. So, like I said, even if Jennifer's suggestions aren't used, Amber will really appreciate that she's not just complaining, but actively trying to improve processes. Jennifer enters Amber's office. She's prepared, but still feeling nervous. What are some ways that she can feel a little more confident? What do you guys think? How's Jennifer going to boost her confidence for this interaction? Being prepared, box breathing, visualizing in advance will all help. Wow, Catherine has like a whole toolkit of ways to boost confidence there. Cassandra says, head up and smile. Megan, power pose. Yeah. Celissa says, power pose or sit up straight. Most definitely. Dan, positive self-talk. Yes, you can be your own cheerleader. So yeah, all those ways are great to boost confidence. So, and it's really great that she was prepared, because when she walked in to talk to Amber, she didn't say something like, how we do this is really dumb, or this place doesn't make sense. She was really professional in how she approached Amber. So it turns out that Amber was really excited about Jennifer's proposed changes and would like Jennifer to work on implementing them. So you guys, look at that. High five. You really helped Jennifer out. You guys did a great job. So this last little bit is about receiving feedback, okay? We are at Ensemble, we are trying to build a culture of feedback. So, when we receive positive feedback, it can be a huge boost to our self-esteem. But, like we talked about, when all of our validation is external, that boost doesn't last. So that's also why it's really important that we teach ourselves how to take all manner of feedback, even when it's perceived as negative. So, it's rare to receive only negative feedback, but sometimes that's the only part we hear. So remind ourselves of the positives and focus on our opportunities for growth. Allow yourself time to process that and kind of think about, is this real or factual? Is this something I really need to work on? We need to focus in on where we need to put all of our efforts. Ask questions. If you need clarification about the feedback that you've gotten from a leader, then you can go ahead and ask questions about that. If you need to know what you could have done differently, or even sometimes if you don't feel like you receive feedback and you want that feedback, go ahead and ask for it. Don't be afraid to ask for guidance, okay? That's what your leader is there for. And then lastly, we want to practice that self-awareness. We really need to be self-aware enough to say, like, even if this is an uncomfortable truth, is it true? So that's really how we receive feedback. And that is all that I have for this session today. We've got about 15 minutes left. And so I would like to ask you, do you guys have anything that you'd like to discuss, talk about, any questions that you may have?
Could you remind me what that book about building self-esteem was that you referenced earlier?
Yes, it's the 6 pillars of self-esteem.
6 pillars of self-esteem.
Yes, Nathaniel Branden. If you guys don't have any questions or anything that you'd like to discuss, I do want to sincerely thank you for coming today. And I'm popping a link in the chat box. If you can just take a minute or two to click on that link. It's a survey, and I want you to tell us if this was beneficial to you, how we did presenting the information to you, because you know, we want to make sure that this is valuable resource to you. Thank you so much for listening and participating today. Thank you, Cassandra, Catherine. Yes, yes, Catherine, amen. There is a lot of work that needs to be done, period. I think, like, just in the whole workplace world, about remote workers, we really do need to focus on different things because it is a big change and transition. So thank you for calling that out. Yeah, and I'm glad that I could remind you of what needs to be done. I do want to encourage you to reach out to me or reach out to the team if you have any questions or you know, even ideas for more classes. Like I said, we'll be sending out a survey. I will be sending you an email this week that has the recording of this class. And after you've taken this survey, you are free to drop off this call. And I want you to have a wonderful Wednesday and a wonderful afternoon. Thank you, everybody.